Hello and welcome to our fourth episode of Hungry Talks. I'm your host, Alana.
And I'm your other host, Bella.
And tonight we're delving into the digitization of advertising and how to use social media strategically. We're talking about everything from brand interaction to artificial intelligence. The guest we've invited here tonight is incredibly switched on in all things strategy, so keep your questions coming through the chat throughout the episode and we'll be sure to grill them in the hot seat at the end. Speaking of, I'd like to introduce the brilliant Tommy Jackson, RMIT alumni and strategist at Hard Hat. Tommy, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you. I wish I could say it's nice to be back on campus, but this will have to do.
First of all, congratulations on Hard Hat's incredible vaccination campaign. I think all of us watching have seen it on social media at one point or another. It's gotten a huge reach and a great response, so amazing work.
Thank you. It was fun to get that out there so quickly. Sometimes when you don't have a client to worry about and you're just doing the pro bono work and getting it done, it's amazing what can come together quickly.
So cool. But today we want to actually get to know you. So first of all, I'd like to ask, what was your journey into strategy and how did you land your position at Hard Hat?
It's a good question. Mine was a pretty unconventional path, as many of us in advertising are, but it sort of zigged and zagged while I was finding the right discipline. So I describe myself as a bit of a strategy misfit because, and I'm glad to say if you find yourself in that position, you're not alone. But what I love doing is always about solving media problems. So it's a big privilege to be able to sit with these problems that our clients have and have the time to think about it. But my background in brand and customer experience I've sort of straddled both. So understanding specializations in strategy is critical to sort of look at the whole picture when you're building a brand. So having all of that skill set's really helpful. But I started in the grad program of what was the Comms Council, which is now the Advertising Council, where I was a strategist and a suit. So I did a bit of both and also got to move around my agency at the time, which was AJF, which was a great privilege. And then I moved to Cummins and Partners, worked in account service for a while before moving back into strategy and then moved to a digital platform agency or advisory called IE. And then I finally landed at Hard Hat only the last couple of months. And so over that time, I've worked on Officeworks, Target, Tennis Australia, Toyota Lexus, Bupa, Movember. So lots of breadth in categories, which is great, and working out what sings to my strengths. So I don't think I'm an automotive or sport person, but non-for-profit and social enterprises has been fun.
Incredible. Wow. Thank you. And a question that does come up a lot in our course is how do you build a folio as a strategist? Like, what should it look like and how can you market yourself?
I'd like to say I have a definitive answer, but with a lot of questions with strategists, I have to say it depends. So what I will say is just like when you're trying to answer a brief, you always need to think about tailoring it to your audience, and it's not going to be one size fits all. So something I find really valuable when networking in general is to treat that person like the target audience and think about how you're going to capture their attention and prove value really early. If you follow anyone, a lot of people in the industry have Twitters that they love to tweet their thoughts out. LinkedIn, And if you keep a sort of finger on the pulse on what work they're doing, it can be really valuable to bring your own approach in terms of what you think, how you would approach that brief, or to show a little curiosity. And again, that applies to the folio. So if you are pitching to a certain agency and you understand their strengths or what categories they're playing in, or potentially what business you're going to be working on, showing your thinking is going to be really valuable. I know I've seen a lot of different approaches that I love to folios for strategists, because it is a difficult one. But I think, like, I saw one where a guy was just basically trying to work brief backwards on briefs. This is a good tip for people who haven't broken into the industry yet. But yeah, he was sort of guessing the work behind the work and putting that on Twitter, which was pretty cool. My folio is very outdated, but I think what the main thing is that you and your value comes through. So, what is it about you that you can bring to flavor, to sort of flavor the brief and the work that you've done, thread those sort of personal skills you have. So, I always talk about my own personal curiosity and how that's driven me into trouble in my personal life, but it's also helped me in my work. And it certainly shows through that sort of altruistic kind of briefs that I was talking about, the humanitarian clients, the likes of Movember and others, that's going to come my way.
That's brilliant. So I guess finding what your unique selling point is, I suppose. And maybe we'll grab some of those folio examples from you later, and we'll send them off to students, because that would be really great to see.
Sure.
So I'd like to know, in your time as a strategist, has the increasing digitization of advertising impacted your role at all?
It's a meaty question. I'll start by saying, so above the line and the below the line is not very clear anymore when it comes to channel selection. So the way that consumers sort of navigate them is much more complex than it used to be, and attribution for those channels can be really difficult. But it often works in loops where they sort of move around and they come back, and the way they engage those channels isn't so linear. So it's really hard, and it's going to get harder where third-party cookies can't operate. But there's a great series from Google called Think with Google that Dan, my boss from Hard Hat, actually features on when talking about behavioral psychology and the way that people buy. And that's certainly a way of thinking about the way digitization and platforms and channels have shifted. The other thing I'll say is that, like, linear TV and out of home and other traditional channels are still some of the most effective. When it comes to effectiveness, you've got to think about how those digital channels can still support a lot of those more traditional channels, and they're best used when they're all used in conjunction. And understanding what your most effective channels are comes from just testing. So when it comes to brand building, especially, these like more traditional channels are really crucial. But now we're seeing with online video adapting and like clients being more open to using that as a primary channel for video, it's becoming much more effective, a lot of those channels, but they have to serve the message and the idea. I think WARC recently released a really good paper on the most effective work that came out of Cannes, so the Cannes Lion winners, and there's some really great examples of how digital channels have been leveraged in really unique ways there. But yeah, looking at more of like a multiplicitous approach where you've got all the channels working together. Don't neglect those other channels as really effective, because ad tech's really cool when it comes to targeting, but sometimes, like, if you're uncovering that universal truth, reaching a mass audience and mass targeting is really more impactful, and using those digital channels to support that and can help. So sort of a roundabout way of saying, not really, but like the central tenets of planning and brand strategy is still the same, but the rules are there because they've stood the test of time. And anyone who sort of chases the shiny new thing without thinking how it serves the brand is probably going to learn the hard way, that we plan the way we do for a reason.
Yeah, no, really good points there. And as a strategist, so you're tasked with the crucial role of finding insights. What are some tips on unearthing strong insights?
I sort of wince when I hear the word insights because they're both our strength and our downfall. I'll start by saying what insights are versus what they aren't. So they're a way, and I'm not going to tell you guys how to suck eggs because I'm sure you're right on the forefront of theory and understanding what an insight is meant to be. But I think in practice, it's a way of putting two radically different things together to unlock a new way of seeing something. So if it doesn't really spark that aha moment for a creative, then it isn't an insight. It's probably an observation, and often insights that once were insightful are now accepted as fact. So insights don't stay insights forever, and that's what's great about creative work is once we see it that way, it's like, why didn't we always see it that way? So remember to use those words that drive tension, like if, though, but. That'll be the unlock when you're trying to write them. So using those sort of words are really going to help you when you're trying to bring two conflicting. I've got these, by the way. I didn't put them on, but then my settings.
Go on, put them on now.
Two different ideas and clashing them together. So in terms of finding them, clients are going to be sometimes laser focused on saying, what's the insight? Or they'll throw the word around insight like it's cheap, like sort of recklessly. And there's a lot of amazing work that isn't even anchored in an insight. I think, when you think about Specsavers, should have gone to Specsaver's platform. It's sort of this global example of a platform, and we've spun campaigns off it at Cummins in terms of just the functional observation around choosing X over Y. But I think the thing about strategy is sometimes the better expression of your own strategy or what the brand is trying to say will actually come from the creative team. I'll get back to what we're actually trying to get to here in a minute, but it's a reflexive process. And so when, sometimes we think that the insight's going to be unlocked for the creative team, but are very much, actually talking through the research and where you've landed. If you've built that relationship with a creative team, it can often unlock the insight from within. So I actually find some of the insights can come from the creative team themselves. So that should sort of inform your approach in unearthing insights. I think the thing is, if you're trying to find two ideas that wouldn't normally go together, you've got to go wide. So who are your direct and indirect competitors? Who's the real enemy? Is it consumers doing nothing at all? And the tension in your insight will come from clashing those things you've found across culture, category, company, and consumer. So this is why it matters to go wide. And where else in the moment could you or your brand or your product be thought of in the mind of consumers?
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. And yeah, insights aren't always a straight path like we're used to seeing. It can come, like you said, from the creative team. So it's good to know that it doesn't have to follow that strict path. So what I'd like to know now, we have a fair few aspiring strategists in our course, and I'm sure they'd be itching to know what skills they should work on to really get their foot in the door in the world of strategy. Would you be able to tell us what these skills might be?
Yeah, so a few things that sort of fall under soft skills, I'd say. Understand the role of your client. So you're a really small part of their day-to-day. So this is something you'll learn really early, but you've got to understand what part of your work makes up the marketing mix, and that can actually uncover opportunities for you to work on new briefs. So think about PR and partnerships, for example, and the skills sort of building those relationships and sort of demonstrating curiosity and interest in your client's work. Get really good at use the opportunity when you first start to ask lots of questions, because you only get that opportunity once to sort of be the one who isn't meant to hold a lot of the information. Get really good at information sourcing and build a toolkit. So Julian Cole, who's quite a well-known strategist, Australian strategist who's just come back from living in New York, has a platform called Planning Dirty Academy. And he does have some free tools if you look at him on LinkedIn, and one of them is a spreadsheet that basically collates all of the key sort of cultural milestones and trend reports that come out every year. And so he's built that toolkit and crowdsourced it with other people inputting as well, to make it easier, to create some rigor around, there is a skill in information sourcing, but you want to spend more time actually going through the information than having to try and seek it as valid source. So think about what some of those platforms are. Often your workplaces will have access to, like the one I mentioned before, WARC, big data, but also like keeping your pulse on industry activities, so like the drum and campaign brief and stuff. And so knowing when and how to use those is going to be really helpful. I mentioned, this skill I said around curiosity. I think we as strategists and creatives as well, but you need to be endlessly curious and have a lot of humility in what you do, because at the end of the day, we are not the people that we're often talking to. They don't, we can't pretend to presume how they think and how they feel. And so, you've got to ask a lot of questions again, and particularly, when interviewing, that's the best way to show you care and that you're an active listener. And when being interviewed as well. So if you're interviewing for a new role, definitely asking a lot of questions is going to be really important. Depending on what you want to do, like some of the harder skills, like I find increasingly understanding SEO and analytics, a lot of that inbound marketing, be able to support and have an opinion for the client on that is going to be helpful. Some of them are going to be open to hearing your expertise on that. Others maybe not so much. But yeah, social platforms and algorithms and how they work at a high level, particularly if you're thinking about specifically social media strategy and media strategy in general. That stuff just changes all the time, and it's really important to know how it affects advertisers and consumers. And the other thing I'll say is that you need to learn to be specific and succinct. So I'm my own worst editor, but you have to remember that clients are only going to remember like 5 to 7 pieces of information when you present. So burying it, or the point you're really trying to make for the sake of looking really smart, you'll just lose them. And a lot of people feel like they need to show a lot of their thinking, but I think it's better to think of words as being kind of expensive. They've paid for all of that thinking that's gone behind it, and you can put it in the appendix. But the skill of the strategist is being able to choose each of those words really carefully and the story you're trying to tell, and that all of that thinking has sort of been synthesized to lead up to that moment. And that's your job. So strategy is choice. It's what to do as much as what not to do. And it is just, at the end of the day, your own informed personal opinion. So make it clear and, make it count.
Amazing. Absolutely brilliant advice there. And I like the staying curious part, because our little slogan is inspiration for curious minds. So I think that one will definitely stick with us. Yeah. Amazing. Well, next up, we've asked Tommy to bring in his favorite campaign that he's worked on, and this is Best Brief. So just a quick disclaimer, this campaign does have mentions of suicide prevention, so please be aware if this is a sensitive topic. But Tommy, the campaign you have brought in is for Movember. Would you be able to give us a quick rundown of what it is about?
Yeah, so I'm sure Movember is quite prevalent now. When I worked on it, it was certainly growing. It's now a global organization that deals with everything from mental health to physical well-being for men. But we had been working with Movember for some time, and we had to think of a means to engage audiences more consistently throughout the year beyond the Movember campaign that they'd become famous for. So this is one of the initiatives. Others, as I said, talk to general health and well-being beyond mental health too.
Wow, yeah, fantastic. Such a brilliant cause. We are now going to take a look at the campaign video.
Men love sharing helpful tips and advice with others online. But when things need fixing in their own life, men often have trouble sharing how they feel. So in the lead up to World Suicide Prevention Day, we created our own how-to videos with a hidden message. Because Facebook videos automatically play without sound, viewers assumed the men in our videos were sharing a helpful tip. But when they were prompted to unmute and listen, it was clear who really needed help.
Now, I'm in a bit of trouble, and I don't know if you really care to hear it. Now, I don't want you to worry about me, but I've just been feeling a bit flat. Now, at first, I felt like I was kind of in a hole. Couldn't be around people. And that's when I realised something's not quite right. I'm really tired.
Things aren't great at home. It's made me feel kind of empty.
I know you shouldn't bottle these things up, so I was wondering whether or not I should see someone, have a proper conversation.
Millions of viewers couldn't believe they missed a man in trouble. But no one missed our message. For 12 hours, our how-to videos became the #1 trending videos on Reddit. The entire series gained over 10 million impressions, and 65,000 people clicked through to access support services on Movember.com. But most importantly, our films encouraged real men to open up, and those around them to listen to what they had to say. Unmute, the how-to videos that taught men how to listen.
Such an incredible campaign video, and it really shows a great understanding of how a target audience uses a platform and really relevant to the context that the ad is being shown in. Now, we'd like to know, how did this project come about?
Yeah, so as I said, we'd sort of been working with them for quite some time, and it was about thinking how to go beyond just the typical Movember campaign. So it was very much understanding that men don't often say how they feel, and that's a huge part of our culture. And so, it was trying to find a way to engage or encourage friends to speak up and talk to these guys and unmute them so that they felt more comfortable talking about how they really felt.
Yeah, so important. Now, we'd like to know what role did you as a strategist play in this project?
Yeah, so my role was to look at the recent primary and secondary research. There'd been a lot of new research coming out about mental health, and as well as talking to young men and how they talk to their friends about their own mental health and about their peers as well. So we knew from the statistics how prevalent these issues of men being mute or quiet was, and the insight came from looking at how there's a culture of like men really love to help others by sharing their handy tips and tricks and life hacks. And creating how-to videos, and we tapped into that. So sharing online, but when things needed fixing in their own lives, they rarely showed how they really felt. So that sort of formulated the basis of our strategy that we built, and then we built the deck from that.
There you go. And that's such a powerful insight, as we were talking about insights before. So thank you for bringing that in to show us. For the next segment, we talk all things tech in the advertising world. We'll cover everything from how to properly use hashtags to how to secure your future career with the rise of artificial intelligence. Hello and welcome to our Tech Talk.
Now, Tammy, our age group is typically referred to as digital natives, but I can't seem to wrap my head around algorithms and how to unironically use hashtags. Could you tell us a bit more about the purpose of them?
Yeah, I mean, hashtags are still rather clunky because they never really found their true place. I think they're undercut a lot now by the way that a lot of the algorithms work intuitively and from other data points. But their existence largely serves as to support the algorithm and for information sorting more than anything else. Do they have a place in advertising anymore? I'm not really sure, to be honest. But for brands sort of wanting to hack or hijack the zeitgeist on platforms like TikTok, I can see why they're a content mandatory. But I wouldn't say that they're the core of an idea a lot of the time. I wouldn't expect them to move the needle for a campaign because that's just not how hashtags or sharing really works anymore, unless there's big cultural implications, like a time's up. But even we've seen that in some cases doesn't go to plan. I think about BLM last year, but if you are jumping a cultural movement, you've got to ask what contribution you're making. You does align with your purpose. You sort of cringe. You look at the way the brands sort of respond to movements like BLM, and they end up just making noise rather than any substance, and it does more harm than good.
Yeah, it definitely has to feel authentic to the brand. Now, let's take a look at one of the finest hashtag fails probably ever. Very unfortunate. Not sure what you're reading, but it's meant to say Susan album party. Give it another read if you don't get it. So, how can brands and campaigns craft relevant and unique hashtags without accidentally becoming the butt of a joke?
I've forgotten about that. Been lost. Important piece of history, that. Let me say the most important thing: do your research on a hashtag, and also use reasonable common sense. And that's always important for our industry, not just hashtags, but campaigns in general. We've nearly gone to market before, and nobody's done the sense check on whether it's already out there or whether it could be interpreted. Or, we talk about like a brand thermometer in terms of what are the fixed points in a brand. For example, McDonald's, that don't change. There's distinctive assets, and then those that need to have a little bit of flex. And sometimes things get lost in translation. Sometimes things don't mean the same, and that definitely applies to hashtags. But it applies to any sort of campaign messaging out there. Make sure you have done your research, and also you have a contingency plan for how those could be misused. So if you're a brand that's standing for something, it often also means you're standing against something, and that can mean that you're going to have people out there who want to give you a hard time. And so, you need to be conscious of that and how you're going to manage that.
Good points. Plan research, very important. Being a self-proclaimed social media junkie, even I struggle to keep up with the new digital features and trends. Now, you're part of a strong digital agency. How do you know if a trend or feature is worth investing time into?
Yeah, the thing about trends by their very nature is they're sort of ephemeral. Like, they're not necessarily going to stand the test of time. So it's worth investing in if it proves valuable and is adopted en masse. But that's the safe option. It can mean you're not jumping on something, but it does mean you're not jumping on something for the sake of it. But brands can be responsible for defining trends. Like, look at Apple, and everyone just follows along. And look at their advertising has been mirrored. To Apple, this wasn't like a trend, though. They were starting the trend because it was core of their purpose, and it was part of their innovation. So it aligns to the core of the brand. So unless you are defining the trend, I would very much say, unless it is a clearly attributable or alignment to your brand, I would be steering clear. If you know your brand and your audience, you can break from the category with something relevant and radically different. And if it's good, you might be the trend. You might be the trend yourself. For most, though, you'll just sort of watch others try and cash in and crash and burn. Or if they succeed, take learnings and see if it applies to you and do it better.
Yeah, it's a tough balance to strike. Now, looking to the future of digital advertising, we're seeing new policies in regards to cookies. Could you tell us what these new policies are and how that's changing the way we'll have to advertise?
Yeah, I had a feeling you might ask me about cookies, and the short answer is not the authority on this, and I wouldn't say that anyone in our industry is. We are all burying our heads in the sand. But it does keep changing. I'm sure you all saw that Google pushed their policies out till 2023. And, this is massive, but what I like about it is it does a few things. It empowers the consumer, maybe too much. Look at opt-in and how we actually have to sometimes think about choice architecture, in terms of behavioral psychology, like, making people opt in potentially means you can have a much larger automatic opt-out rate, and what are the implications for that. But it provides that power to the consumer. It provides transparency, and it takes us back to the drawing board on how we reach consumers. So there's obviously been a lot of research, from the likes of Byron Sharp about mass targeting and how we actually, brands achieve fame. And brands have relied on like really targeted approach through cookies to try and reach people. But are they saying anything important? If it's relevant, then it's often worth thinking about, taking a wider approach. And so for advertising online, that means like digital contextual placements. So think about the context and the message rather than assuming you're going to be able to reach that person specifically. It means that organizations are going to have to clean up their own data and manage that data better and create a value exchange for those customers to want to give over their information willingly, to drive a better experience. But for us, we're just going to get smarter about contextual advertising, and we've actually got to get good creative. Good creative always generates cut through. So hopefully marketers on the client side will stop thinking, well, we've got targeting, we've got personalization, it doesn't really matter what the message is, it's just the medium we can get to these people and tell them what we need to tell them. You have to be more relevant than ever, and stop relying on that, because the creative will matter more than ever.
Yeah, it's definitely really important to know that as strategists and creatives, we won't really be able to rely heavily on data tracking. And in terms of up and coming development in the tech world is AI, and we've seen like artificial intelligence being used in advertising, mostly, especially in copywriting. So, for example, let's have a look at this AI written ad. So granted, they're not quite there yet. Not sure if tasting like bird is a really compelling selling point, but the technology is rapidly developing and is currently being used successfully to monitor ad spending, sales, tracking, and customer behavior. Tommy, how do you see AI affecting the way we work in the future with the skills we'll need to be equipped with?
Mm. That Whopper one's an interesting example. What I think you're going to see more of soon is microcopy and really functional messaging and automation. And you're going to see that largely be able to be done by AI. You already see that in terms of the way that dynamic messaging works and contextual advertising based on where it is. And now you don't have to input all of that. You might see billboards with a certain name or of a certain area or talking to a certain individual, and that's all really exciting. But I do believe that without a level of consciousness, AI is going to have limitations and humans still have an edge because they've got empathy and they understand the way that creativity works. So AI is really good at recognizing and replicating patterns, but it lacks intuition and emotion. So we can get better and better at that. AI is going to get really good at sort of pushing personalization, pushing targeting. Consumers, they're going to want a way of, I guess it's going to become easier for consumers to know when or harder actually for people to know when they're talking to a human and when they're talking to a robot. But at the end of the day, AI lacks that empathetic aspect. And still, when it comes to creative, as you can see, it just can't unlock that. So it'll ease burdens with the dynamic messaging and automation and stuff, but it's not going to take away the core of what we do as strategists or creatives. But I'd be a little bit more worried about the process for project managers and accounts people, because perhaps a lot of that can be automated. But who's going to want to receive a brief from them?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I saw this AI, I think it was Google, where it calls, like it makes a call and makes a booking for you. It was like an
Yeah,
AI. It's so insane. And it's just not the same. Like you want to talk to a human. Um,
yeah.
and that's, I guess, the biggest difference. So thanks, Tommy, for that brilliant discussion. Lots of changes to keep up with in the tech world. We're now going to be crossing to Ben on the street. You know the drill by now, so take it away, Ben.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to some more Ben on the Street. In this episode, it's all about social media. Social media is the future of advertising, where brands need to remain competitive by staying up to date with the social media trends. We're bringing back two creative duos from DDB, talking about the social media advertising world and some of the things that are happening in it. Unfortunately, again, tonight will be scheduled online. So we're going to go Ben to his little studio at home. See you there.
We welcome back Hannah and Kate. Let's give them a warm welcome. Last time, these two spoke a little about duos, giving us a lot of insight into art direction and copywriting. Tonight, we're switching it up and we're going to talk about the rise in brands practicing activism. So let's take a deep dive into how the public versus how our ad experts feel about the authenticity of social media activism by brands. So there's a few questions I've got lined up, getting them up. So we have an ad from Absolute Vodka, their Instagram page, and it's a series of posts for Pride Month. What's your initial thoughts on this post? What do you think they're trying to achieve?
Well, my initial thoughts when I saw it was like those TikToks that are like, brands during Pride. Yes, Queen. Yes, Pride. We love cake. Kind of those things. I think they're definitely just trying to show their support for the LGBTQ plus community and say, drink Absolute Vodka during Pride.
Exactly. And do you think it's genuine when brands involve themselves in activism? Like, what would you take for a brand's activism on social media to be taken seriously? Like, what would need to be on there?
It feels like a scam, if I'm
It
totally
does,
honest.
yeah.
It feels just like they're cashing in on it because they can get the good image of like, we support, I mean, whatever's going on, Pride Month for that, but you're right, like Black Lives Matter, anything
All
else
that sort
that's
of stuff,
supported.
yeah.
And when they're not really doing anything the rest of the year, the majority of them, like, Pride Month finishes and they just sort of immediately go back to what it was and they kind of never talk about that until Pride Month next year.
100%.
I think either way, it's good that they're like representing that because it's like better than like it's normalizing it a bit more. So it's like either way, it's good, but then also like it could be bad if it's like they're just doing it for clout.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, you go, Kate. You go.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think a brand like Absolute has kind of been, they've kind of set the groundwork that means that they can make posts like this and have them feel really authentic. They've been, I mean, I'm not saying that they haven't tripped up in their ads in the past, but they have a pretty generally unproblematic history with supporting gay issues and being a part of Pride for decades. And so I think, and through the rest of their content, they'll use like representation and kind of put their money where their mouth is, basically, which means that when posts like this get put up, it feels authentic and it feels like very valid that that's a statement they can make as a brand. I feel like having a bit of that groundwork for brands is so important for people to really take them seriously.
Yeah, I think you're so right, Kate. It's like, it's about being genuine and it's about doing something which doesn't feel performative in the way that you kind of use social media. I think for Absolute, this is like a little sprinkle on top of everything that they do. I mean, Absolute were painting their bottles rainbow before it was like okay to do that, and it was like when it was a really big deal. So I think, yeah, for them it feels real. But I think there's a lot of brands out there which use kind of use the bare minimum to be able to be like, we support Pride, or we support, it's not even just for Pride, it's for like climate change or feminism. And it's just like, it feels really, when you know that's not the most they can do, you think it's lame. It's really lame.
Would a brand showing their support for a subject such as Pride Month make you want to purchase from them?
Yeah, I think that, you need, like, as Kate said, you need to put in the groundwork. And I think there's a difference between just being like using your platform and being like rainbow advertising and actually being like, okay, why should a brand speak out, or why should a brand do anything? It's because brands have influence, and it's like, okay, what influence am I creating within the community that I can change, that feels really genuine and authentic and feels real, that can actually create positive change. So I think like things like internally as a company, like how can you kind of create really good hiring practices? Like when it comes to your advertising, instead of just doing Pride Month during June or whenever Mardi Gras is on in, I think, February or January here, and instead of just doing it within those months, are you including like LGBTQ plus people in your advertising all the time? Like, it's like they're the things that feel like genuine good activism, where if like you do that and then you celebrate Pride, it feels really real and it feels like it's coming from like a true place.
Helps them find their community, but it shouldn't be something that's only talked about and represented for 1 month. It should be all year round.
I agree with that. Like, I think it should be shown throughout the whole year. Like, you talk about it through the whole year, it's represented through the whole year, but having that month that's like special for that is like kind of like reminds you and like makes it more important, I guess. So yeah, I think it's an important month.
Is social media a good way to show a brand's activism or an issue?
It's such a shareable, it's the most accessible for people. It's again, I think as long as you're doing it right and putting out the right message, and I think it's a great way to show that you're getting involved, because you can also jump into things that other brands are doing and get involved that way. It doesn't just have to be you making a statement as a brand. It can be seeing how somebody else is doing it or seeing a trend and getting on board that so quickly. It can be so small, but it speaks volumes about you as a company.
Totally. And I think as well, like, social media is where the conversations are happening, I think, like, and it allows brands to react in real time and be able to kind of have open and honest conversations with communities. And I think as well, considering like, especially for LGBTQ plus community, that for them, like social media and the internet has allowed a lot of people to have voices and to find like like-minded communities. And I think that being able to reach people through their own communities online is a really great way of gaining trust and be able to like actually make change. Yeah.
Well, that's all the questions we have for today for social media. Thank you so much for coming on again for the second time to this show. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. It's been an absolute pleasure. You two are absolutely brilliant. Just giving compliments all around. Thank you. So we're now bringing back to Alana and Bella in the studio.
Thanks, Ben. Great insights there. Now, Tommy, how emoji fluent are you?
Well, Apple seems to keep adding emojis, so as long as you don't throw me with anything too new, I'll
No, we got the classics, so don't worry about that. We're pitting our strategy expert against our social media obsessed host, Bella. This is Name That Brand. In this game, our two contestants will be shown a series of emojis depicting a brand. You will be given 10 seconds to write the answer on a sheet of paper and reveal your answer to the camera immediately after the time is up. Those of you at home, feel free to play along in the comments and submit your guesses in the chat. For example, this set of emojis would be Red Bull. Bella, how confident are you feeling about this?
Not very. If you want to know, the first time I saw the dot and the bull, I guessed red cow.
Oh, jeez. Anyway, Tommy, are you ready?
Yeah, I used to work for Red Bull, so I got that one, but you should have put that in there.
Too
then I would have had a better chance.
Oh, sorry, I'd already seen it and failed spectacularly at it. So.
All right, let's get started. Let's see the first one. And your time starts now. So you have 10 seconds to write down your guesses. Think you got it? Okay. We're starting out easy, they're going to get harder. And time. Show us your answers. Hey, yes, all right. Let's see the answer. Sorry, I got ahead of myself there. And it was Firefox. So a point to both of you. On to the next one.
Okay. I'm ready.
And your time starts now. What could this one be? Is it easy? Is it a trick question? Third message.
Oh, wait.
And time. Write it down.
Wait. I got it.
And show your answers. Oh, yes. Good job. All right. That's 1 point each. And let's take a look at the next one. And your time starts now.
Black and white cookie?
What could this one be? And pens down. Pages up. Okay, let's see the answer.
Can you read it?
Okay, these are too easy.
I was struggling on that one. Struggling on that one.
Let's hope this next one will stump you. And the time starts now. How you feeling, Bella?
I read train sandwich and I was really confident.
Okay, stop. Show us your answers.
But I changed it.
Okay. Good job. Point each. Wow, it's getting very close. And let's take a look at the next one. And your time starts now. Surely this will trip you up. Good. And pages up.
That was quick.
Oh! Oh, okay.
I got it.
Cool. Yes, it's Audi. Good job, Bella. All
There
right.
you go.
You're now in the lead.
It's because it's like the one car brand I know.
You have the brand manager rolling in their grave if they saw 4 red dots.
Yeah, I know. It was the closest we could get. All right, your time starts now.
I'm not allowed to judge my handwriting.
It's totally fine.
Thanks. I'm gonna be a copywriter.
You've been doing
I can't
so
write.
well so far. And page is up. Okay, let's have a look at the answer. And good job, guys. 1 point each. Let's take a look at the next one. And your time starts now. I feel like this is an exam. And time up. Show us your answers. Yeah, good job. Okay, I've got to make these harder next time. So that's a point each. And on to the next one. Your time starts now. I got this one severely wrong the first time I saw it, so maybe this one will trip you up. And stop. Okay, let's have a look at the answer. And it was Starbucks. Wow, Bella. Were you pretending to not know that Red Bull one? So that
I'm gonna be real. No, the Red Bull one really stumped me, but for some reason I'm getting these. And I've even taken the thing because our thing was scrolling through it, and I took that down, so I'm not even cheating.
Yeah. Let's take a look at the next one now. And your time starts now.
I have no idea.
What could this one be? Good.
No.
Ooh, is no one gonna get it? And pages up.
Oh.
If there's
Said
anything to
FedEx.
show. Oh, okay. Okay, let's have a look at the answer. And a point to
Xbox.
Tommy. Good
Xbox.
job. I didn't guess that one either.
I said
don't worry.
FedEx.
On to the bonus round now, which is worth 3 points, so it is anyone's game. Let's take a look. And your time starts now. I tried to make this one tricky, so...
Yeah, they did.
Right compass field?
And... Oh, just write down your best guess and show your pages.
It's wrong, but this is what I got.
One Direction. The North Face. Okay. Let's have a look at the answer.
It's not a brand. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Westfield.
It was Westfield. So no one got that.
I kept saying North.
So with 7 points in second place, we have Tommy. And in first place, we've got Bella with 8 points. So congratulations, Bella. Who saw that coming? So you won the prize of bragging rights. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Moving on now, Tommy has brought in a very exciting brief for us this week. Make sure you have the document opened or quickly download it from John's announcement because it's time for the brief delivery.
And remember to put any questions in the chat as we go along so we can get them answered for you tonight. So Tommy, can you walk us quickly through the client, the aim of the brief, the target audience, all that good stuff?
Yeah, of course. So Foster Care Victoria is a initiative between foster care agencies across the state. It's designed to be able to bring them all together under a single organisation and be able to drive recruitment of new foster care parents and accreditation so that they can take care of kids in need. They also provide information about the process of becoming an accredited foster carer because there's a lot of myths out there around what's required For example, a lot of people think they need an extra room, things like that. So they need to address a lot of that. The audience they're trying to speak to, it's obviously a wide one, but from a demographic perspective, they're looking for the younger population, so between 18 and 24 and 35 to 39, because these are the groups that they know are most responsive, are much more likely to consider foster caring. And within that subsegment, those who identify as LGBTQIA+, and speak a language other than English, and also Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander are more likely to consider. So it's really important at the moment, particularly during COVID. They have lost a lot of active or non-active, they're now called non-active carers. So they need to be able to grow that bucket of new people to consider foster caring while they're addressing the lapsed carers as well. So I think there's I think it was 1,825 active carers and an additional 672 non-active. So we at least want to be able to make up for that loss and offset that with new carers, and hopefully at the same time be able to re-engage those who have left. So the challenge is sort of twofold. So from a comms perspective, you want to be able to raise awareness of foster care Victoria by 15% amongst that age bracket by the end of the year, and also recruit an additional 400 qualified applicants to foster care Victoria, which is probably more reasonable than trying to offset that entire subsegment while they try and re-engage them.
Thank you, Tommy, for bringing that one in. It's a really interesting and important one. And we just want to ask, what's the deadline for that?
Well, I guess we can give you two weeks.
2 weeks? Awesome. Thank you. Easy.
Okay, great.
And while you guys get your questions in, we're going to have Perry bring in the latest in advertising news this week. Perry, over to you.
Good evening and welcome to Hungry News. I'm your host, Perry Capnius. Our top stories tonight are brought to you by B&T, Australia's leading publication for advertising and media news. Snickers in Spain has pulled their latest TVC featuring social media star Alice Gilbaya after an LGBTQ rights group branded it shameful. Critics weren't sure if it was advertising ice cream or gay conversion therapy. Spain's Minister for Equality, Irene Montero, tweeted, "I wonder who would think it's a good idea to use homophobia as a business strategy." It's not the first time Snickers has caused offence after a 2008 ad featuring Mr. T calling a speed walker a disgrace to the man race was also banned. In more chocolatey news, here's a true story which actually happened to me yesterday whilst I was out for a walk. I found a wrapped twirl on the nature strip outside a house, but I left it there because there was someone in the driveway. 100 metres later, I saw another one, so despite not particularly enjoying a twirl, I decided it was a sign and took it home for later. That night, whilst watching TV, I saw Twirl had launched a new campaign which claims to read your future. Talk about serendipity. So I tried the Twirl reader on the lucky chocolate I'd found, and these were the rather ominous results. If you're wanting to work for Hungry Talks, there may be a position as newsreader available, since it didn't necessarily say I'd wake up after those 24 hours. You can read more about these stories on bnt.com.au and in my soon-to-be posthumously released autobiography, A Twirl with Death. And on to this week's Deadly Ads. Despite this being a satirical segment, I want to be serious for a moment and warn you that these ads refer to death and similar themes, so if they raise any concerns for you, there are some services listed below. So in today's increasingly secular society, churches are getting a bit more creative. Whilst this billboard makes a compelling point, I beg you to consider who ate food off the ground for Hungry News content. This 2017 article claims that the death toll in an attack on Cambrils, Spain was 14. However, I suspect it rose to 15 shortly after this unlucky intern made this shocking stock image choice. Here's to hoping this was done by an AI. Honesty is the best policy according to this very meta ad for an ad agency. Benchmark of Dubai created these satirical ads plastered with their slogan, "Think Beyond." Beyond what, you may ask? I don't know what's beyond this life, but I have a feeling their clients may know. In 2012, an acronym made famous by rapper Drake was announced as Word of the Year by the Oxford English Dictionary, used as a rationale or endorsement for irresponsible or impulsive behaviour. Can you guess what it is? I think naming a hospice YOLO is irresponsible behaviour, but I digress. That's all for tonight.
Thanks, Perry, for the update. Now it's time to put Tommy in the hot seat and have all your burning questions answered. We will just read out 2 questions tonight, but we'll make sure all your questions get answered. We will send them in an email to Tommy. So this first question comes from Seb. When has a strategy you've put forward gone wrong? When did it sound good on paper but was a train wreck in practice? Has that ever happened? Put you on the spot.
Look, I mean, I think when I was going back before about saying about really being really succinct, sometimes what can happen is you get bogged down in the detail and they miss the point entirely. The worst thing that can happen is not doing your groundwork and understanding key aspects of the brand, whether that's a distinctive asset or whatever it is. And that is all they will focus on, and you will lose all of the goodwill in the room and all the buy-in. So, I mean, a strategy hasn't gone awry per se, but you can get it from both ends. You can get it from the client, and you can also get it from the creative team where they just don't agree with it. And you've got to be able to back yourself, and that's when the research really comes through. But at the end of the day, as I've said, it is an opinion. Strategy is an opinion. It's an informed one, and it is choices. And sometimes you are going to get pushback. So understanding who's in the room, whether it is the client or the creative, and how they think to be able to get buy-in is really important. I think in both cases, the important thing is to make them feel like they've had input. If you want people to rally around your brief, you've got to sort of ask them and make them feel involved. And that's why I think shopping the brief around before you actually go in and brief it to the creatives is really important, because it means that their voice has been heard and they understand where you're coming from rather than just going in dark. But no, I've not had that, but I do fear the day that may happen.
Good points there. This one comes from Vic. So where does creativity fall in the role of a strategist? And in light of like hybrid careers and stuff, do you ever kind of cross over to being a creative, or what is your opinion on kind of like hybrid creative / strategist?
Yeah, that's funny, because I was just saying today to a UX designer in a website brief that we were working on when I'm doing more customer experience work. She was like, "Oh, like you can do this bit," and I said, "Oh no, you can still facilitate." And she said, "Oh no, I can't do strategy." And I was like, "Well, we've all been hired because we're all creative people, and we all want to understand why we're doing what we're doing. And anyone who wants to work in a silo isn't going to go very far." So, I consider, creative ideas are in themselves creative, and a strategy has to come from ideas and thinking about things in new ways. So you have to have a creative problem-solving approach, and then the unlock from the creative team is going to be how you actually bring that to life. I do think understanding your lane in terms of, you don't want to step on anyone's toes in terms of thinking about execution, but sometimes thinking about and working backwards from what it is that you're trying to achieve in market can be quite valuable. So I wouldn't say, my role is a little bit hybrid in terms of what strategy I do, but all of us are creative and all of us should be able to think strategically. And the best creative directors I work with understand that.
Amazing, good stuff. And with that last question, it does bring us to the end of another brilliant Hungry Talks episode. We do have to give a big thank you to you, Tommy, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us tonight and give us all your amazing insights into strategy and digital marketing. So, Tommy, how did you find tonight's episode?
It was lots of fun. I tried to get in a theme. I passed on the classes because I just thought I'm going to not be able to do what I'm doing, and that's going to create all sorts of
committed.
Online. But I was really fun. And if anyone has any questions or wants to throw that brief at me and get some feedback, they are more than welcome.
Amazing. Yeah, we'll collect them into an email for you. Well, thanks again. We hope to see you for pitch night. Take care.
Thanks, you.
Tommy.
Now, students, if you haven't already, go ahead and download the brief from John's announcement on Canvas and get your ideas down. Besides that, we hope you guys have enjoyed this episode, and we will see you next week where we'll be taking a look at working brand side. But for now, I'm Bella.
And I'm Alana, and this has been Hungry Talks. We hope you have a groovy night.